Hey there, and welcome back to the deep dive.
Hi, good to be here.
So, you've given us some really interesting sources today, all focusing on, well, quite a striking decision by the UK government.
That's right, the sanctions on two senior Israeli ministers.
Exactly. And that's pretty unusual for the UK, isn't it? So, our goal for this deep dive is to use the material you've shared to really unpack why this happened now.
Yeah, what it signals maybe about Britain's stance and, the potential ripple effects.
Okay, let's dive right in. As you said, sanctioning Israeli officials like this is not something London does often. It feels significant.
It absolutely does. It suggests a deliberate shift in approach, or at least a very strong statement.
So who exactly are we talking about? The sources name them clearly.
Yes, the two individuals are Bezalel Smotrich, who is the finance minister,
Okay.
and Itamar Ben-Gvir, the national security minister. And the reports consistently label them as far-right figures in the current government.
Right. And the UK's reason, what's the official line from the sources?
Well, according to the material, it boils down to their rhetoric, specifically described as incendiary and alleged incitement of violence,
Incitement leading to. Where specifically?
leading to increased settler violence in the West Bank. The analysis you provided points to comments they made, particularly after the October 7th attacks, and links those directly to a surge in that violence.
Ah, okay. So the UK is framing this carefully. It's about the West Bank, not necessarily a comment on the broader Gaza conflict itself.
Precisely. The government seems to be presenting it as a response to specific human rights and security concerns stemming from these individuals' actions regarding the West Bank.
And is the UK acting alone here, or is this part of a wider trend?
Well, what's interesting, and the sources highlight this, is that this move kind of aligns the UK with recent actions by the US and the EU.
Ah, okay. So there's some parallel movement there, even if the exact sanctions or targets differ slightly.
Exactly. It suggests perhaps a growing international consensus, or at least shared concern about the situation there.
Given the UK's usually, let's say, cautious relationship with Israel historically, how big a deal is this shift?
It's pretty significant. The material suggests it's more than just a slap on the wrist. It looks like a deliberate distancing from certain policies and, well, certain figures within the current Israeli leadership.
Strong signal then.
Definitely. It's a condemnation that the UK hasn't often directed so pointedly at senior Israeli officials before.
What do the sources suggest is driving this? Why now?
The reports point to a few things coming together. There's definitely growing domestic pressure in the UK. Lots of public concern about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza plays into that.
Okay.
Then there's the UK wanting to perhaps assert itself on human rights globally. And crucially, the sources mention the ongoing ICC investigation into potential war crimes as, part of the context.
Makes sense. The UK likely wants to be seen taking these concerns seriously.
Right. Now, about Smotrich and Ben-Gvir themselves, the sources offer more background. Why are they seen as so controversial?
Yes, tell us more about that.
Well, Smotrich, leader of the religious Zionism party, the reports cite his anti-Arab comments, calling himself a proud homophobe, and his push for West Bank annexation. Pretty hardline stuff.
And Ben-Gvir?
Often described as even more extreme. A follower of the Koch party, which is banned even in Israel, and the U.S. considers it terroristic. He's praised its founder, Meir Kahan.
Wow. And these aren't fringe figures, they're in the government.
Key ministers in the current coalition, yes.
So given all that, what's the likely impact of these UK sanctions? Practical and maybe more importantly, symbolic.
Practically, it means things like asset freezes in the UK, travel bans to the UK, standard sanction stuff.
Okay.
But symbolically,
Yeah.
and the sources seem to lean into this, it sends a really strong message. It marks them internationally.
That's outside the norm, perhaps.
Sort of, yeah. Delegitimizes them on the global stage to some extent. Now, will it change their behavior? The reports are skeptical, but it puts down a marker.
How might this play out inside Israel or among Palestinians?
The sources suggest it could be mixed. In Israel, some might hope it empowers moderates, maybe. But others, especially their supporters, will likely see it as foreign meddling.
And for Palestinians?
Generally welcomed, according to the reports, but perhaps with cynicism. Questioning if it signals a real shift in broader Western policy or just targets individuals.
It's not without risks for the UK either, surely. Straining ties.
Absolutely. Israel's a strategic partner, trade, defense, intelligence. The analysis flags potential strain there, maybe diplomatic blowback, like summoning the ambassador, or issues with trade talks.
So looking ahead, what should we and our listeners be watching for? based on these sources?
A few things. Will Israel react strongly diplomatically? Will these sanctions perhaps be expanded if violence continues or escalates?
Mm-hmm.
There's also the question of UK arms sales to Israel. This might increase pressure for a review. And as the reports touch on, how this might feed into UK politics, especially with an election potentially on the horizon.
Right. So, key things for you listening are watch Israel's response, see if any other countries follow the UK's lead beyond the US-EU steps already taken. That could show a wider trend.
And maybe a final question to ponder from all this.
Yeah.
How effective are these kinds of targeted, arguably symbolic sanctions, really? Do they change policy on the ground?
Or what does this tell us about how international views are maybe shifting or fracturing when it comes to key players in the region? Lots to think about.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for digging into these sources with us today. Really helpful to get this clear picture.
My pleasure. Always good to talk it through.
That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.